What is going on, YouTube? This is Ask the Root. So I'm going to review the debut album by Travie McCoy. Basically, this project came out in the late spring of 2010, and it's called Lazarus. Now, Travie McCoy is an alternative rap type rapper, very similar to Kid Cudi and later Kanye West, folks like Talib Kweli and Lupe Fiasco, some of those type folks. But he was a part of the group Gym Class Heroes, which kind of brandished and got started within the mid late 2000s and kind of crested in the early 2010s and stuff. But they had a number of alternative rap hits. I want to start getting into them a little bit more. But I did particularly like this album. I remember it from back in the day just solely because of the song Billionaire, which was a pretty outstanding hit. This is another song that Bruno Mars was on in the summer throughout. This is another song that Bruno Mars was on throughout 2010, between like the song Nothing on You and then this song Billionaire. And then later Bruno Mars's album from that year. He completely dominated 2010. And this is just a good look because not only does Travie McCoy have friends in high places, but he's also a pretty awesome songwriter and has some really excellent hooks on here. And this is just an overall jolt of night energy. This is just an overall jolt of night energy, and this is a perfect kind of album for like the 2010s. This is definitely one I would say is like a central early 2010s hit record for like stepping out, and kind of very similar to like LMFAO's Sorry for Party Rocking and like stuff that 303 did, and even Katy Perry, her 2010 album or some of that type stuff. I just would have to say a lot of this has a pretty concocted feel towards it, and this is going to get a rave score. I mean, unfortunately, the other two singles, apart from Billionaire, didn't really chart that high, but this is still a pretty rave album. Just a lot of good stuff on here. It definitely was trying to make records to have you have a good time to go out and get crunk, dance, and just have some weekend drinks and that type of stuff, and overall have a good time. And some of this is kind of makeshift in like a certain kind of way. It's kind of a breed and an in-betweener between like makeshift kind of day commute type stuff and then evening night commute. I feel like this is kind of music between like about 4 o'clock p.m. and like 8 o'clock p.m. I mean, there are a couple crazy tunes on here, but it doesn't get to the sheer carnivorous party craziness of LMFAO, but it just kind of keeps it between, yeah, I would just have to say like 4 o'clock p.m. and about 8:30 p.m., something like that, where it gets kind of turned up, but not to the extreme degree of like being a true. I mean, it's just kind of an in-between party album, I would have to say, where it's about stepping out, but still kind of maintaining some of that decorum and social candor of just like being not necessarily completely cutting loose, just kind of in a more platonic sense. So it's a halfway platonic album, but then it's kind of not. So it's just kind of that concept where this is something that you could listen to with your coworkers. It is rap, and this is probably one of the more makeshift ready rap records I can think of the early 2010s. So it's definitely saying something. But in terms of the singles, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the singles now. So the first single is Billionaire. Billionaire had Bruno Mars on the hook. This is produced by Bruno Mars's old group, the Smeezing Tens, which the Smeezing Tens actually do like 3 songs on here. So Bruno Mars's production group helps out Travie McCoy on here, which is another boost that he got, which is pretty kick-ass. But Billionaire is definitely a summery, ambitious kind of outdoor outing song. I definitely think it has like a reggae-like feel. It's very similar to the stuff that Sean Kingston did back in 2007, just for like a decently hot day. But I would definitely have to say it feels like something more in like an outdoor sense, where it can be a nightclub. I think in the right sense, you could probably hear this at like a night venue just because of the sheer smash success of the hook and that type of stuff and Travie's affable lyrics. But I would have to say definitely seems to me like a more outdoor kind of setting where you're going to hear music, but you can still be outdoors and stuff. This great June, July, August, September kind of tune, all summer basically. I just would have to say it's just an excellent hit, great hook, almost hit #1. It's just an outstanding song overall. This is a great song for Travie McCoy to kick things off, and a great song that Bruno Mars helped out on. Need You is the second single, and this is another excellent one. I'm really surprised that this song did not do a lot better. It didn't even crack the Billboard 100. It hit like 106. It got in the bonus, like it got in the bubbling under 100 singles. So it was like at 106, something like that. But it just deserved a lot more than it got. And I would say this is like a late day, kind of evening makeshift malaise kind of tune. It's kind of peppy, but it's also day to day. I feel like it's nice. It's a nice radio bop, definitely a day to day song, just kind of for that malaise of just like I was telling you earlier about being at like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. This one's not quite as much of like a party tune, like Billionaire and We'll Be All Right, but it definitely has like some feel good energy. A lot of the songs on this album are very upbeat and feel good. They just have that really expressive and kind of like peppy kind of feel towards it. And I would have to say it. I mean, this one is kind of malaise, but I still see it as something where, hey, you're going to be off work in another 35, 25 minutes, something like that. Or maybe you just got off work and you're get ready to step out, but just kind of the malaise of getting home, changing clothes, some of that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. Just an overall great feel. The hook is pretty outstanding. So Travie really, I mean, he put a lot of effort into crafting these songs. That's why I'm surprised that he didn't last longer as like a solo musician, because a lot of these were just packed to go, trained to go right off the bat. We'll Be All Right is the third single, and this is another excellent one. This is another one I'm real surprised that this didn't chart a lot higher. But this one's very similar to 303 and LMFAO. I just would have to say stuff that like it was kind of electronica, kind of early EDM, some of that the stuff that Katy Perry, 303, LMFAO, Pitbull were kind of doing around that time. As a nice dance club kind of stepping out kind of feel, but it's still, I mean, it's a very energizing tune. I do feel like this is a very energizing one. This is the sort of stuff that like Owl City and 303 did, but it's just not quite as sheerly crazy as some of the later records that you would hear. Like this is kind of like a pop rap album, but it never quite hits full blown electronica where you're completely, taking your shirt off, getting crunk at a dance club, taking like 10 or 13 shots. I just would have to say it might be like you might be on like your second or third shot, something like that, but it just doesn't quite reach the craziness of saying, hey, yeah, you're going complete bananas and stuff. So I just would have to say, but it is a dance club tune. It's like a lighter version of like some like party rock anthem that was kind of cresting in 2011. I mean, that came out a year later, but this kind of says it's just a lighter version of that if you want to collect some 2010s kind of EDM and party rap, party pop kind of tunes and that sort of stuff. But it is a pretty good one. I definitely like this. It has a great hook on here. It's pretty, I would say it's pretty immediate. I would have to say definitely an immediate kind of highlight. These are just songs. It's really too bad that Travie McCoy underperformed, because all three of these are hooky and just ready to go and just kind of stock in terms of stepping out in that sort of context. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the rest of the album. So out of 10 songs, I'm reviewing the 10-song version on Spotify. So out of 10 songs, I wound up recommending to you 8. So that's really damn good, I would have to say. So the 8 songs I recommend would be Billionaire, Need You, We'll Be All Right, Dr. Feelgood, After Midnight, Critical, Super Bad 1134, and The Manual. Now, a couple of these tunes that kind of feel like pretty similar to Billionaire, just with a more night-based feel towards it, and kind of similar to a couple songs that feel similar to Billionaire, but not quite as summery, but also very similar to Will Be All Right, but not quite as crazy, would be The Manual with T-Pain and Young Cash. This is a very nice one that kind of has that context. And The Manual is kind of more of like an evening out, dinner and activities kind of song. I definitely see this as like a song you go out to dinner for, whether it's indoor or outdoor, just kind of where you're kind of jivey, you're not specifically in like a suit or dressing up completely, but just kind of going out and having some food and that type of stuff. And it's just kind of a jivey song at that. So it just kind of has very energetic about going out to dinner. Most of the time, dinner songs have more sophistication, but this one's just kind of more jivey about it. And T-Pain does pretty well on the hook. Another song that has a similar production to The Manual and We'll Be All Right is After Midnight. This is a very jivey, bouncy song with an excellent hook on here. Very similar to We'll Be All Right, just overall. It's a thrilling song. This has a real kind of quick pace and just overall jivey energy for just stepping out at night and kind of having like this contemporary kind of feels about it. This kind of, whether it's just going out for dinner or just getting ready to go out to a dance club, go to a bar or something like that, just stepping out at like a plaza or strip mall, buying some clothes. This kind of overall, just evening activities, Friday night kind of feel towards it. It says it's after midnight, but I still kind of see some of these songs as more of like 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, because I just feel like the concept, like Travie McCoy's version of After Midnight, not to say that he's kind of lambent and lightweight, but I feel like his version of crazy is not quite the crazy that you'll see from other electronic and pop rap kind of contemporaries like Pitbull and LMFAO and some of them. But this says After Midnight, but it seems to me to be more like 8:39, something like that. But I do like the concept behind it. Dr. Feelgood. Dr. Feelgood is actually another one that's like the manual after midnight and we'll be all right. Has a very kind of peppy kind of tune towards it. Just a nice evening outgoing song, peppy, but not necessarily a dance club song. I feel like these are just ones that you'd kind of listen to at like some sort of plaza type area, just some social outing point where it doesn't necessarily have to be. I think it can be a club song, but it's not necessarily a dance club. Or maybe you're just going to like a booth and having drinks and mingling a little bit, but it does have that particular kind of vibe of stepping out and just not being at the house. So it's just interesting kind of get a lot of these very similar production, just a more I mean, it's a little bit more of a jingle than After Midnight was, or After Midnight was kind of more outdoors based, but I feel like and the manual was definitely more of like a dinner kind of song. I feel like Dr. Feelgood is just kind of more in like a club where you're actually at some place where music is gonna yeah, where night music and kind of stepping out music's gonna be played and stuff. It's just a great song for that. Critical is definitely a night venue song. I see this as like a feel good kind of stepping out, mingling kind of song, but it can also be like a cruising around at night, just kind of in your whip, that type stuff. Just kind of maybe getting dinner or something like that, getting like Burger King or something like that, just something quick or something that's just kind of have food in the whip and get ready to figure out what you're going to do. And I definitely see it as like it's just a jolt. It's very exhilarating songs. One of the more quick paced kind of ones where some of these just feel like being at a night venue, but this one's just kind of got a little bit more busy energy towards it, but I definitely like it. I do like the kind of quick pace of this album. There's just a lot of these cuts that are just intended for, dinners out, driving around, going to some nightclubs and bars occasionally and that type stuff. Just overall having that concept. So a lot of this album just kind of has that particular context besides the singles, but there's just an overall lot. So to talk about the only two songs I didn't enjoy on here, the only real two songs I didn't enjoy was just A Kid Again and then Don't Pretend, which Don't Pretend kind of felt like a whiny kind of ladies song. That this was very kind of hurt and bothered a lot more than I would have expected. I was really expecting Travie McCoy to have like an R&B flavored tune that would have been like We'll Be All Right and just something a little bit more. It just felt kind of beside itself in a lot more ways than I was expecting it to. It was just kind of a little bit more whiny than I was anticipating. But then A Kid Again was kind of this like a kind of piano-esque, ballad-esque kind of tune that just was kind of an awkward one. Just about having, I mean, a lot of this album is very peppy and upbeat, but this one just kind of had that rousy kind of energy of "We'll Be All Right," but just more broadcasted towards the youthful appeal of it, and I just didn't quite vibe with that as much. So it's just kind of this is a pretty bright and spry kind of album, but I do like the concept that most of these songs hit immediately, and they just have an overall kind of lighter, lesser version of LMFAO and Pitbull and like 303 and some of that type of stuff, but it still has that same compact stepping out energy. Just perfect Friday, Saturday, Thursday kind of album, and just the energy. The hooks hit hard, the impact hits hard, the guests hit hard, the songwriting, all that stuff hits hard. It's just a great overall time, and there's not really much to complain about. So I'm going to give this album a 10 out of 10. Definitely impactful album, me liking 8 songs out of 10. Now, I could give it an 8, but I feel like just that many on such a short album is definitely to be rewarded, especially considering the fact that so many of these songs are that fun and just have an overall jolt of energy and great time. So it's just a very infectious album. And there was something else I was going to say, I forgot. Like in terms of the social score, I'm going to give the social score a 10 also. Oh, yeah, I was going to say, well, I'll give the social score a 10, but I was going to say that it's really too bad that the singles on this album underperformed because I think a series of Travie McCoy albums past this one would have been really excellent. This would have been a wicked thing to see what he could have wound up with getting more songs like this. He just really feels like a symbol of 2010, which is really too bad because I think he could have desperately been needed in 2012 and 2013, 2014 as like this particular sound, like the EDM and pop rap and 303 and LMFAO sound kind of evolved and stuff, but it just kind of became more of like a signature parody of 2010 more so than further in the 2010s decade. But still, it gets the social score is just impactful, just chock full of hits, and there's just plenty to do. So 10 out of 10. In terms of the future, like I said, Travie McCoy has at least dropped another album. I want to say he actually put it out in 2022 of all years, so just last year. But he really took quite a bit of time off. I mean, he did at least do another Gym Class Heroes album in late 2011 after this one, and that actually charted pretty well. But apart from that, he took a pretty sizable break. I know he had addiction problems later on, but just to kind of say, I am going to eventually check out some Gym Class Heroes, so we'll see some more stuff about him.